Hi everyone, welcome to our latest Meet the Creator interview. This is going to be our YA interview for January 2024, and I am so pleased to introduce you to Polly Crosby, and we're going to be talking about her YA novel, This Tale is Forbidden. So welcome, Polly. Absolutely loved the book, but we'll get on to that a little bit later. Are you happy to start us off with a reading, please?
Yeah, of course. I thought it makes sense to start at the beginning. So I'm just going to read you the first couple of pages. So This Tale is Forbidden, and it's my debut YA novel. Chapter 1. The day that Nesta's grandma went missing, the mist began to move backwards. It was a subtle sign, and one that Grandma had warned Nesta about many times, and she would have noticed had she not been so angry at her grandmother. It was a cold, crisp autumn day on the cusp of winter, and Nesta pulled her patched cloak around her, her eyes on the forest floor, searching for evidence that the wolves had returned. Nesta was practiced at tracking animals and birds. Even though she was tall, taller now than her grandmother, she could still make herself small and still, so still that the woodland creatures assumed she was just a part of the forest, which she supposed she was. But the wolves were different. They were sly and secretive and far too clever to be tricked. They never came close, however quiet she made herself, however wolfish Nesta tried to be. When she was younger, the wolves had howled for so long one night that they had set her teeth chattering with fear. She had admitted to her grandma that the sound of them really frightened her. Really, her grandmother had replied, I'm more frightened when I don't hear them. Why, Grandma? Because the wolves are our guardians, Nesta. A pact exists between us. The wolves protect us, and we protect them. To hear a wolf is to feel safe, my love, I promise. Ever since that night, the wolves had fascinated Nesta more than anything else in the woods. Nesta loved the woods. She had lived beneath the towering ancient trees all her life, in a tumble-down cottage she shared with her grandma. Her mother had died when she was born, and Grandma's cottage was all she had ever known. The little building was barely more than a stone shack, made up of just one room, a large bed in one corner covered in a patchwork quilt. It was a warm and welcoming space, with a roaring fire where her grandmother cooked delicious stews and hot buttered toast. But as Nesta grew older, she began to feel that it was a little too neat and tidy. Other than the bed, a table, and Grandma's antique gramophone, there were no things, no pictures or ornaments at all. It was spick and span, and in Nesta's opinion, just a little too empty. Except, of course, for the books. In one corner of the cottage was a small bookcase heaving with books. They were old, older than her grandma, their leather and cloth covers smelling thrillingly musty. They looked so out of place amid the stark emptiness of the rest of the cottage. But it was here that Nesta felt most at home. She had spent hours, years poring over them, absorbing every detail she could of the world beyond the woods, except that surely the world out there must have moved on from the time that these books were written. When Nesta was younger, she tried to fill the windowsills with bits and bobs she'd found in the forest, acorn cups and toadstools, feathers and fossils. But whenever she took these finds back to the cottage, be it a pine cone or a dried old oak leaf, Grandma had always made sure to examine them, running her hands over each one, looking for what Nesta didn't know. Only a few of these items passed this odd test, the others disappearing mysteriously. And as Nesta grew older, the idea of displaying these finds felt childish somehow, and she cleared the windowsills of them. Still, Nesta felt compelled to collect bits of nature. Occasionally, she was drawn to things out there in the forest, as if they were calling to her. A few weeks ago, she had found a beautiful barn owl's feather, pale and ghostly, and when she picked it up, she thought she felt a whisper rise up from it. Back at the cottage, her grandma had peered at it closely, her wrinkled face creased with worry. Then abruptly, she'd gone to the fireplace and thrust the precious find into the flames. What are you doing? Nesta had cried, watching in horror as the feather charred to a skeleton before her eyes. But Grandma didn't answer. Instead, she'd gone to the cottage door and looked out, a fearful expression on her face.
Wonderful, wonderful. What a perfect start. Now, as you said, this is your debut YA novel. It's not your debut novel. Your previous novels have been more for adults. So,
Yes.
what was the thinking behind moving into YA?
Oh, well, I think when I was writing I just finished my second adult novel. I've had three adult novels published. And I wanted to write my next one. And I just started writing the next adult novel, but there was this persistent voice in my ear, and it was Nesta's voice. And every time I sat down to write the adult novel, this other voice kept whispering and shouting by the end of it in my ear. And so I couldn't not write this story. It was a labor of love that I kept as a hobby and as a thing just for me initially. And then I reached the end of writing it and I thought, I've got to try and get this published. I just loved writing it so much, and I was so proud of it, I suppose.
As you should be. As you should be. I absolutely loved it. So, yes, I certainly think so. And you wrote it mainly during lockdown as well. Is that right?
Yes, I wrote it very much in my spare time. So I'm very fortunate in that I can write full time, but writing in my spare time meant that I wrote in my job and my hobby. So there was a lot of writing going on. But yeah, it was over lockdown, but in the little pockets of time I could find between contracted books.
Perfect. So, obviously, it's very hard when we do the interviews not to give too many spoilers. Okay, it's really difficult, but naturally, backbone of the story is about the fact that the traditional fairy tales that we all know and kind of love are not perhaps the truest fairy tales. And I love the fact that you turn that on its head very much in that way. Was that because the passivity of females in popular fairy tales had irritated you?
Yes, in a nutshell, yes. Let's just end the interview there. I think that's it. You've summed it up. I mean, when I was growing up, I loved fairy tales. I loved the darkness of them and the magic and the folklore and the strangeness. And what I didn't love was that most of the female characters were there to have a happy ending involving getting married, or their jobs were cleaning houses and that kind of thing and looking after dwarves. And it always annoyed me. And I wish that when I was a teenager, I'd have had a book to read that could have had a heroine like Nesta who refuses to be quietened.
She is the most wonderful character, Nesta. I did love the fact that the book is full of such strong female characters, and Nesta is so wonderfully feisty. She's just such a wonderfully feisty teenager. And of course, it is very much a feminist book, and indeed, reading parts of it made me extremely annoyed because, so I'm guessing that was a very important theme for you, and it was something you wanted to bring out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Nesta has grown up in the woods with her grandma in a very isolated life, and she goes to the city nearby, which is run by the authorities, and they're a very horrible government who always put men and boys above women and girls. And she is disgusted by this. And I wanted Nesta to be quite naive because it then showed how angry she was. When she got there, she didn't know that she should be quiet and passive like all the other women. And so she shouted about how angry and upset she was. And that's what I wanted, because it does still go on. We're not yet equal as far as we have come with regard gender equality. We are not yet equal, and I think we need as many people and characters and books shouting about this as possible.
I think the other thing that struck me was even down to the females in the city being told how they could have their hair and what they could wear, and it's a really irritating that sort of thing does actually still go on.
Well, this is the thing. It's been likened to The Handmaid's Tale, but obviously for a younger audience. And it is that thing that Margaret Atwood said, that all the things that she put into The Handmaid's Tale actually do happen in this world somewhere as we speak. And it is, all these things are happening. And women do have to wear certain clothes in some places. They can only do certain jobs. They might not be able to leave the house without their husbands. And that's a very frightening thought when you realise how true it still is.
Very much so. There's also a very strong family theme as well. Family is very important, isn't it, in this story? Was that influenced by your own background? Are any of the female characters based on people you know?
Oh, I wouldn't say completely, although Nesta certainly has some similarities to my niece Ruby, who is a wonderfully strong, feisty teen who happens to love reading and writing. And so I spend a lot of time with her, and she's certainly got into Nesta's character, I think. But no, they're definitely from my mind. But I'm very lucky to have a very lovely, loving family, and it's so important. I feel extremely privileged.
Yeah, I'm biting my lip here because I don't want to talk about the most important family thing that comes out near the end of the book, but I'm just going to say, wow. Okay. I was just like, wow, that was just amazing. I absolutely adored that bit. Now, because I enjoyed the book so much, I know, and I did love it. I'm hoping it's the first in a series. Am I right?
Well, we shall see. I certainly have ideas for the next one. I'm currently writing a completely different story for Scholastic again. So my next book with them will not be in that world, but it will certainly be of a similar genre. This one I would say is dystopian fairy tale. The next one is possibly even more dystopian than fairy tale, but still has a lot of similar themes, and it's actually centered around disability, the next one. So, but yes, one day hopefully, and it's the planning of it is there. So we shall see. We'll see how much people love Nesta and whether they get tired of her constantly shouting.
No, we can never get tired of Nesta. We need more of Nesta, definitely. Definitely. I mean, I also love the nature theme that's to it as well, and the power of nature, and oh my gosh, the wolves. Oh my gosh, that was just amazing. And I definitely need, if we're looking at things, that you need to produce after, I need a set of those cards.
Oh yeah, they are cool, aren't they?
Can you imagine?
I'm quite creative. I don't think I'm quite that good at art, but I'll give it a go. I'll give it a go. Why not?
We need them. We definitely need them.
Yeah, I think nature is a massive part. All my writing, adult and teen, is very centered around nature. And I trained as a forest school leader, so I'm very much about getting out in the woods and things. And so yeah, that's a big part of my writing for me, definitely.
Well, I was going to ask you what you're working on at the moment. You've already told us that. You've just told us what you're working on at the moment, so that's fantastic. So, with the you're working on the new YA at the moment. Are you thinking about doing both? Are you thinking about doing both adult and YA, or did you particularly enjoy the YA side?
I love both, and I write very different. In some ways, my voice is quite similar, but the way I write is very different with YA and adult. I'm with my YA ones, I'm quite punchy for me. I'm quite fast paced, but my adult ones are a lot more lingering, I think. And I wish I could take that fast pacedness and put it into my adult ones, but it's not possible. My brain just goes, no, this is how it is. And so I'm currently I've just finished editing my next adult one, which is out in August next year, and that's called The House of Fever. And it's quite a dreary sounding book about a tuberculosis sanatorium, but it's quite a dark, sort of gothic thriller, I suppose, really. Yeah, so I'm constantly juggling two different kinds of books, and I love that because it means I never get bored. I can go from one to the other every few weeks and come fresh to the page again, I suppose.
Well, I have to say, I absolutely loved your writing style in This Book Is Forgiven because it reads like a fairy tale. It reads very fairy tale like. And you have still got the gothic in there, you've got the gothic side to it, but I just couldn't stop reading. I fully admit I read it in one greedy gulp. I didn't put it down. I
No.
just sat there and read
Oh.
and read and read until I'd finished it, and I absolutely loved it. So, yes, if we don't see any more of Nesta, I will be very disappointed, Polly. I will be very disappointed.
Well, you're very welcome to let Scholastic know. And I mean, I'm all up for writing another one. So as long as our whole team is up for it, then so am I, definitely. Yeah.
Oh, well, it left so many questions at the
I
end.
know, I know, I
There
know.
was so much that you thought, yeah, but
Uh,
what's happening next? Where's
yeah,
that going to be taken forward? So, I mean, it very much lends it to that, doesn't it?
absolutely. And a lot of people that have read it have said they would like a sequel. So we'll see.
Well, I hope you do, and I hope Scholastic listen. If you're watching Scholastic, you need to listen. We need a second one. Thank you very much, Polly. It's been absolutely lovely talking to you. Perhaps we'll have you back when the next one comes out, which will be
Oh,
absolutely wonderful.
lovely. Thank you so much for having me.